And welcome into the MLB Hot Stove Daily here at the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us late on a Wednesday evening. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Hitting that thumbs up really goes a long way to helping us out, so let's see if we can see a little bit of a spike right here. Those hearts in the chat are nice as well, but make sure you hit that thumbs up if you're enjoying yourself, enjoy the content, hit that subscribe button. Follow us on X at UpsideSN and on Facebook, Upside Sports Network. If you want to interact with the channel, reach out to us. We posed a couple of different questions to you over the last couple of days. If you want to reach out to us and follow up on those, we'd be happy to hear from you there. But tonight, there's a few things I wanted to get into. First, we'll begin with the actual headlines. The Diamondbacks are receiving renewed interest, no surprise, in Jordan Montgomery. Now, Montgomery has not pitched overly great in spring training, but I think him having a better than last offseason or last spring training is at least going to give some reason for hope that things could get better. It just doesn't look like Arizona's going to work out in any way, shape, or form for him. Just seems to be a change of scenery guy top to bottom there. Now, as far as teams that he could go to, lots of teams right now are still looking for pitching help. The Rangers just brought in Patrick Corbin. I don't think they would be outside, or that would be out of the realm of possibility of that happening if the Diamondbacks ate enough money. Same goes for the New York Yankees. Chicago Cubs are still looking for more rotation reinforcements. Toronto Blue Jays, New York Mets, and the list goes on and on as far as teams looking for starting pitching help. Now, of course, the price tag is pretty significant. It's going to depend largely on how much the Diamondbacks are willing to eat and what it's ultimately going to cost in trade to be able to get it done. Now, as far as other trade candidates that we've seen, Dylan Cease has seen his name out there literally every single day for the better part of 2.5 weeks now, ever since Garrett Cole has announced that he was going to be out for the entirety of the season due to Tommy John surgery. Yankees have been pushing very, very hard to bring him in every single day, reaching out to AJ Preller and company, trying to see if they can get him to budge, working out different scenarios as far as a trade that might work out, but the price has not come down. The price for Dylan Cease, according to Baseball Trade Value, is around 30-ish, $33 million. Meanwhile, the Padres are asking for around $50 million as far as value. Now, of course, those are just numbers to put towards an actual value of a player. But you can really tell how they're really shooting high for a guy that's on an expiring deal that may not sign long-term wherever he is traded. So, are they going to have to lower their asking price? I'd imagine they will at some point. But this is still not that point. We're still before opening day. Remember, Dylan Cease was not traded until after the start of the season last year, and I don't see any reason for them to rush right now. It is the baseball people that are trying to keep him anyway, so it's the finance people that are trying to push this trade through and try to force A.J. Preller's hand, and they're going to have to be bowled over to ultimately trade him away. So the Yankees, you're going to have to give up one heck of a package to be able to bring him in, and I'm not sure he's going to be your best option. I'm very surprised that the Yankees have chosen him to be the first guy that they would try to push this hard for. There are a couple other starting pitchers I think would fit the role better, but maybe they just don't want to go down that road. Talking about Sandy Alcantara, Pablo Lopez, other starting pitchers that could be available on the trade block. But instead, they want to go ahead and get this deal done. I think that's part of the reason why Dylan Cease is the guy they're trying to acquire right now, because he is the most readily available of those starters. Now, when I say readily available, take that with a big grain of salt. I don't think Sandy Alcantara is going to be traded until he rehabs his value. He's done very well so far, but the Marlins want to sell high on him at the trade deadline. They're not going to sell low right now just because they're getting a decent offer. They want to hold out for the best offer they can get. Meanwhile, the Minnesota Twins are still kind of in that purgatory realm. They haven't decided whether they're going to buy or sell at the deadline. They're having to get ownership approval just to make an $1 million addition to their roster and Ty France. Forget about Harrison Bader. They basically had to go down to the mat with ownership in order to free up the money to bring him in. So this is a team that's really limited financially, and if this team is out of contention or at least 2 or 3, 4 games back at the All-Star break, this could be a team that instantly becomes one of the biggest sellers we've seen in the last 10 years. They have some really good pieces that they could trade away. Carlos Correa has been a nice offensive piece. Willie Castro would be a nice rental. The Yankees, I'm sure, would love somebody like that. Jose Miranda, I know there's a lot of teams out there still looking for third base help. He'd be a utility-type player who could be your starter at third base, be a starter at first, maybe play a little bit of second base. They do have some other options as well. A veteran catcher that you might be able to turn to in Christian Walker. 3 starters, including Pablo Lopez, that have significant value on the market. And then, of course, probably the best closer in the game that might be traded at this year's deadline. Class A isn't going anywhere. That's pretty much your number 1. I guess I would consider Devin Williams the number 2 right now. I'm not sure how firm I am on that one, honestly, because I'm not sure how good he's going to be this year. I have high hopes for him in New York, but it could easily go the other way as well. Meanwhile, Duran has been really productive for the Minnesota Twins and hasn't had nearly the issues in October that Williams has had. However, he hasn't had the same opportunities that Williams has had either. So, I think he's going to get a really nice package at the trade deadline. He's got 3 years of control. At the deadline, you'll have 2.5 years left to control. Meanwhile, Williams only had 1 year left with the Brewers. That's why they got a smaller package back than what Duran is going to get in return for the Twins. But appreciate you guys joining us. Welcome in Holly, Steven, Kent, welcome back. Yankees falling a bit guaranteed. Mets, Rangers 2 due to injuries would be my guess. We will get into the power rankings here in just a moment. Let's see here, Steven. Yankees are a Judge injury away from missing the playoffs. I'm not sure they're in the playoffs right now as currently constructed. I do agree that this team is still a very good team. I think they'll be in contention for a wild card spot. I'm right on the precipice of saying one way or the other as far as whether they get into the postseason or not. We will have our prediction show coming out the day before opening day. So got to make sure you check in on that one as we get closer to opening day. Want to wait and see how many more injuries end up coming down the pike here. But the Yankees, to me, were one team that I consider a favorite for the ALCS. They are no longer that case. The loss of Garrett Cole, the loss of Luis Gil, the loss of Giancarlo Stanton, and the loss this offseason of Juan Soto, I think it's going to be a little bit too much for them to overcome to get to a World Series run, to get to an ALCS. If they add a Dylan Cease, I think it would certainly be a nice piece for them, but doesn't necessarily fill the hole completely left by Garrett Cole. So you got to hope that the addition of Max Fried and another pitcher like a Dylan Cease would more than make up for it based off of last year, but you were already trying to make up for Juan Soto's departure by having a stronger pitching staff, by having a more well-rounded team overall, and now you take away your best starting pitcher, Garrett Cole, and one of the best rookies we saw last year in Luis Gil. I'm curious to see how the Yankees really respond to this adversity. You talk about the Rangers and Mets also having significant injuries. The 4 and 5, I say 4 and 5, the 3 and 5 starters anyway for the Texas Rangers are going to miss at least a month of the season, it sounds like. Meanwhile, the Mets are in a very similar boat there, but more with their 3 and 2. They already needed some starting pitching. They're going to have Clay Holmes be their opening day starter. Tells you where their state of their rotation is at. They needed to add somebody before these injuries befell them. Love the signing that they made in Jose Urena, but they need to do more to address that rotation. I think they're going to wait until the deadline to get this thing done as far as adding another high-impact starter for them. I imagine they're going to be teams waiting on the periphery of the Framber Valdez market around the trade deadline, because if Houston falls back, say 10 games from the division, maybe 8 games from the wild card, Valdez could easily find himself on the move at the deadline. A couple other starters that I'm paying attention to, not named Sandy Alcantara or Pablo Lopez. I'm looking at Max Scherzer, who could be a nice deadline addition for a team. Of course, he's having some injury issues right now, even though he looked great in the beginning of the spring. You knew injuries were going to become an issue for him, and he thought he had solved the nerve issue that he had last year that's really plagued him for about a year and change now at the Texas Rangers. Now he goes to Toronto, and the same nerve issue is giving him the same problems. I wonder if this might be the final season for Max Scherzer due to injuries continuing to crop up. Verlander had a nice final start anyway for the San Francisco Giants. If the Giants are out of wildcard contention, maybe you're able to pry him away and get one more pennant race out of Justin Verlander. And then, of course, the Seattle Mariners. I don't think they're willing to move any of their starters right now. However, with Kirby going on the injured list to start the year, there is a thought process here that says maybe they want to save the money here on Castillo and trade him away and kind of redistribute the dollars there, since they're trying to pinch pennies in that ownership group there. Understandable, because their financial situation is whatever they think their financial situation is. It's not my money. I'm not going to tell you how to spend your money either. But the thing is, you have the best starting rotation your franchise has ever had, and all you can muster up is $15 million more in payroll. There are ways to flex up your payroll when you have a really competitive team like they do right now. And then in those years when they really don't, when they're a rebuilding ball club, bottom out a little bit. Take that $90 million payroll that you might have with the luxury tax, with the arbitration cases, you're more like 130 at that point. Take that down to 70, and then with luxury tax calculations and arbitration and so forth, you're up to that 110. You save yourself the $20 million in that season and apply it to this year. Understandably, you don't want to rob Peter to pay Paul, but at a certain point, you have to give your team a real fighting chance to win here. And the team just seems a little hamstrung by the financial situation that they're in. If we get to the All-Star break and the Mariners are, say, 6 games out of the wild card spot, their offense really hasn't come around. Their pitching staff still looks pretty good. Bullpen still looks pretty good, but they just don't have enough offense. They could go one of two ways. They could, of course, try to add some more offense, which they tried to do all offseason and were unsuccessful in doing so. Or more likely, they offload the contract of Castillo, spread out those dollars a little bit differently. The last option that I think is not out of the realm of possibility is they could trade one of their elite starting pitchers. talking Logan Gilbert or George Kirby. I think they could get a king's ransom and then some if they traded one of those two starting pitchers. Really get some nice offensive pieces in there. They have the rotation pieces that they can hold down the fort if one of those guys does leave via trade. And who knows what piece you might get back in trade that might be able to slide into that rotation in his spot anyway. I think that might be the route they're ultimately going to have to take. Maybe not this year, maybe the following year, but it's something I think we should start paying more attention to on the Seattle Mariners from the outside looking in. I think they're one big injury away in that starting rotation to being a sub 500 team. I think they're right at 500 as currently is. I think the offense is so mediocre, underperforming, whatever nice way you want to put it, that they're not going to be able to weather any significant injury to their pitching staff. That's why the injury to Kirby in the beginning of the year could really basically completely change the outlook of their season. You'll see that reflected in the power rankings tonight. All right. Appreciate you guys joining us. Without further ado, let's begin the updated MLB Power Rankings for Wednesday, March 19th. Alrighty, so let's get to the rankings we had a couple of weeks ago anyway, when we were going into the beginning of spring training. Where did these teams ultimately rank? Dodgers had the best bullpen, best lineup, and best rotation in the entire business. To me, that's why they were 1-1. And then you have the Phillies, Rangers, Braves, and Orioles in the top 5. Still holding the bye to pretty much all of those rankings right now, but we'll see how they reflect as we go through. The rest of your top 10, Astros, Diamondbacks, Yankees, Mets, were your top 10. Red Sox just on the outside of that picture looking in. Last team in here, to me, still pretty much the same. We're looking at the Chicago White Sox. They have not been a good team for a better part of 2 years now and change, and I don't see that changing. So we'll start at the bottom here and kind of work our way up here. As we go through these teams, one other source I wanted to kind of point out here is the Fangraphs injury site here. So basically, they give you a list of all the different injuries and the timetables for when they're going to be back. If they're already on the injured list, when will they be eligible to return? Those kinds of things. So we look at the White Sox, for instance. We know they're going to be at the very bottom here. Pretty much the one piece that might be missing a little bit of time here is Josh Rojas. Sounds like he still may make opening day, but he's the only player on here that I think would be an impact player for them. Impact, air quotes, maybe one win this year. But let's go back over to our power rankings here. And I'm just going to go ahead and not waste any time here. This one's pretty easy. Let me get this whole column bold. There we go. White Sox hold down number 30. The Rockies, to me, are still pretty much in the same spot. I did see some bright spots from their bullpen right now, but I don't think any of those bright spots overshadow the Marlins, the Angels, the Nationals, or the Rays. So the Rockies, to me, very solidly in number 29. This is a spot where I think they'll be the majority of the season. Marlins were our 28. I think the positive reports we're getting on Sandy Alcantara are very nice for them. I do not expect them to win many games, though, even with him performing at the highest of levels. I'm not sure their offense can support enough create enough runs, even when he does he throws a one-hit, one-run gem. I think they might lose 1-0. I think that offense is putrid, and I think we'll see evidence of that throughout the year. Now, the Marlins, to me, I think they're going to be pretty much in that 26 to 28 range all season long. Angels, they've done a nice job this offseason. I like the pieces that they brought in. Especially over the last couple of weeks. I like Perdomo to add to that middle relief of that bullpen. The one team above them that I have is the Nationals. I still kind of picture them in a very similar spot here. The Rays, they extended the deal for Yandy Diaz by 1 season. The A's are pretty much set with their rotation. They haven't had any significant injuries in that rotation. Miller is back. So as far as the 27 spot for me, this is where I'm going to do a slight flip-flop here. And because of the injury issues the Nationals will be facing this year, it's going to be kind of a testing ground for them. I'm going to go ahead and put them down 1 spot and because of the additions to the bullpen to kind of round out that bullpen, which was very back heavy with Joyce and Jensen back there, I think they move up one spot with the addition of Perdomo, and I like what they've done with that roster so far. So, to me, the Rays and A's are still pretty much in the same spot. I thought the Rays might try to juggle their payroll a little bit. They chose to keep this, team intact, and I don't think they've really gained on the team in front of them, the A's. So, Rays very solidly in there at 25. No big changes so far. Now, the next few teams here, we have the Athletics, Pirates, Reds, Giants, and Cardinals. Cardinals and Giants kind of get into that category where all those teams are very comparable to me. Pirates and A's are in a very similar situation. Pirates, very good on the pitching side, not so much on the offense. A's, good on the offense, not so good on the pitching side. To me, I'd rather go with pitching, and I think the Pirates might be able to get a couple of clutch hits from some of their performers, some of their offseason signings. Is it going to be enough to get very high in that division? I don't think so, but I'm going to go ahead and still keep the A's pretty much in that same exact spot at that 24. For the Pirates, I keep them at 23. Reds, Giants, and Cardinals here. Cardinals, to me, are a team that's going to be rebuilding here. They did not offload the contract of Nolan Arenado. They still have Helsley, so they're still a good team right now. Giants, I still think, are a step behind them because of Arenado and Helsley. Reds, until they prove the Francona effect later in the season, I still got to keep them down for now. So this is kind of an early season low point for the Reds. I do expect them to grow as the season goes along, being above the teams like the Cardinals, teams like the Giants. I think they'll be above both of those by the time the end of the season is finished. But right now, I can't move them up any higher than where they are because they haven't really done much to me on the field or as far as their transactions to really give me hope that this thing is going to turn itself around. Giants and Cardinals, I think the addition of keeping Nolan Arenado and Helsley on the roster keeps the Giants one spot below here. So Giants easily there. Cardinals, I think, stay in the same spot as well. All right. Let me scroll up here a little bit so that way you guys can kind of see the rest of these teams. All right, so looking at the teams that are left, there are a few teams that I look at that I've got to really consider their injuries. Got to look at the Dodgers, got to look at the Rangers, got to look at the Braves a little bit. Astros with their injuries to their pitching staff, Yankees and the Mets. Red Sox have a plethora of injury issues as well, and they have a tough schedule out of the gate. They just lost Jared Jones. I did see that he did have an injury. Let me pull up that one real quick, see if it's on the sheet here. Jared Jones, elbow discomfort. They're saying he's still going to be on the opening day roster, but we shall see. Horowitz, of course, is out for another 6 to 8 weeks, it looks like. Not too many other injuries there. But, all right, so one team I wanted to look at first is the Boston Red Sox and just show you the list of injuries that they are dealing with. Let me see if it's on here. I think it's up high. Yep, there it is. Okay, look at all the different injuries Boston is dealing with. Look how many of them are in their starting rotation. Sandoval, Giolito, Bayo, Crawford, Whitlock, Murphy. That's a lot of arms that you'd be counting on. Now, a lot of these guys are projected to be ready for opening day or close to it. I do wonder how much performance they're going to get out of these guys early in the year. I think they're going to rely on a lot of their older pitchers, a lot of their new additions to their roster. Bregman for their offense, Crochet for their pitching staff. But they need more depth in that rotation. They're using all of it right now, and all of it is on the injured list. They're another team that's struggling with as far as health in that rotation there. So something to kind of keep an eye on. But let's go back to our sheet here and just show you what we're looking at. Cubs, Tigers, Royals, Blue Jays, Twins are the next 5. But again, remember those fallers. The Mets, the Yankees, Astros, and Rangers. Do I think any of them fall to the level of the Cubs? I don't think so. I think the Cubs are still pretty solidly where they're at. I think they're still another elite starting pitcher away from getting into that real next step, that next level of team, that upper echelon of the teams. Not necessarily that best level, but that level where you're looking at them like a favorite to win the division. I don't think the Cubs are there yet until they add another number 1 to that staff. So, Cubs to me pretty much stay in the same spot. However, we still have to look at the Tigers. To me, the Tigers have a really good starting rotation, a couple of injury issues of late to go into that rotation. That bullpen does worry me a little bit, and so this is where I'm going to have a little bit of a change here. I love the Tigers' starting rotation. I just don't think their offense and their bullpen is going to be able to close down the games that they need them to. Meanwhile, Presley, to me, and the overall health of the Cubs, I understand they just had a rough time anyway dealing with the best team in baseball, to me, in the Dodgers. But to me, that's the Dodgers. That's not necessarily how I view the Cubs. I think they acquitted themselves fairly well internationally. Matt Shaw, anyway, is up at the big league level, tells me they have really high hopes for his involvement with this team. And I'm going to put them one spot above the Tigers. Royals, Blue Jays, and Twins. To me, with the injury issues now for Max Scherzer, the kind of a make-or-break season for the Blue Jays as far as their future, this is where I'm going to drop them down one slot here. The injury to Scherzer, I think, really decreases the chances of them getting out of the gate strong here. Looking at the Blue Jays injuries, let me pull it up for you. Varsho, projected to go on the injured list. Burr, Swanson, Scherzer, all expected to be on the injured list. Manoah is already on the injured list. So a team that didn't really add elite talent outside of Anthony Santander needed to have their pieces in that starting rotation readily available. Varsho is going to be a nice piece for them, but he's expected to be on the injured list, is at least considered questionable for opening day. This is a Blue Jays team that I think has fallen down a rung here with the injury to Scherzer. Tells you how frail their situation is right now and why they should have gone for more long-term options, in my opinion. Royals, I think they take the step above here. I don't think they go above the Twins. I think the Twins are in still a pretty good spot for the pieces that they have on the roster until they decide to go and pick a direction. Do they want to compete this year? Do they want to stand pat? Do they want to tear it down? But for right now, I think they're still pretty much right in the middle of the league here at 15. Now here's where we get some interesting fits here. Mets in that rotation, are the issues enough there to really drop them far enough? Red Sox, are the issues there enough to drop them? Yankees, same thing. Rangers, same thing. Looking at these teams here, Mariners with Kirby's injury, I'm going to drop them beneath the Brewers for sure. That offense just does not look very good to me still. I'm tempted to put them below the Twins. In fact, I will. I'm going to put the Mariners here because of the injury to Kirby to start. I'm going to move the Twins up one. And then to me, that's where the Brewers go after that. Brewers are still very thin on that pitching side as well. Guardians have a little bit more depth here. But this is where I think the Red Sox might drop a couple of spots due to the injury issues in their staff. So I think the Red Sox easily slide here to 12. Only down a couple of spots with all their injury issues. Tells you how highly I think of their chances to really have a nice start to the year, even with the injury issues and a strong schedule to start. All right, Guardians, do they go above the Padres or do they stay beneath them? Or do the Mets fall even further here? To me, I still think with Dylan Cease on the Padres, they're a step above the Guardians. So I have to put the Guardians here. Mets and Padres. Who do I put where? Ike Merrill's going to have a big year. The bullpen is still unchanged. Padres are still a pretty good stead. Due to the injuries, I'm dropping the Mets by 1. And the Padres rise. I feel like I haven't dropped the Yankees far enough here. Let me just double check. Do I put them above the Guardians if I'm the Yankees? I think I still do. Do I put the Yankees still above the Mets? I think that's where I falter here. So I think the Yankees actually fall to 10. Mets fall, but stay at 9. But the Padres go to 8. Even with the injury issues to Yu Darvish, they still have the depth in that starting rotation right now to be able to weather the storm for now. But they're an injury away from really plummeting down this list or other injury issues as well. Twins lost Royce Lewis. No surprise there. Twins consistently lose all of their top performers, it seems like. All right. Diamondbacks. They're still relatively healthy. Haven't seen any real negatives on that out of that team yet. Let me see here. Arizona, they only have 3 injuries. Graveman projected for the injured list. Other than that, they're fairly healthy. Rangers, their injuries are in their starting staff, but that basically just means they're guys they're hoping to call up early in the year are just going to start the season there in that rotation. But they are a lot thinner now than what they were. Wyatt Langford looks really good. Adolis Garcia looks back to being the same old Adolis we saw in 23. I think he's got a great year coming. Astros have made Altuve their permanent left fielder. Orioles, they have their fair share of injuries right now. They're another team I want to look at. There's Baltimore. Bautista coming back, but you're starting with Wells, Bradish, Mateo, Rogers, McDermott, all on the injured list. Henderson expected to be available. Rodriguez, injured list. O'Neill already injured, but expected to be available. And Kittredge. That's a lot of pieces, but they still have a lot of talent even with those injuries. So, looking back at our list here, we're to the top 7. Do we keep the Diamondbacks at 7? Do we move the Astros, the Orioles, the Rangers down a little bit here? The young guys for the Astros really are playing well, and I think they're going to get a good chance to make the team and make an impact on that team. I'm thinking the Astros might leapfrog due to injury, and only due to injury, the Orioles for now. But I'm still thinking the Diamondbacks, while they have a really solid roster, bullpen, rotation, the lineup still worries me a little bit. They're a really solid, well put together team. Rangers, I do think they have to come down here a little bit. I think I put them below the Braves now. I think I put them at least until we see Rocker and Leiter at the big league level and show they can compete and perform at that level. I think I got to bump them down here just a little bit. I think the Diamondbacks are pretty high. All right, so I'm going to leave the Diamondbacks where they are. I think they're going to have a really strong year, though. I'm going to bump the Orioles down 1 spot because I don't think they have necessarily the depth that they had before the injuries. Astros, I think they've actually created some depth with having their young guys perform so well, but Altuve locking down the primary left field responsibilities I think is good for them. Even with his issues out there defensively, I think he'll be better than what he's been at second base, and therefore their defense will be better as a whole. All right, then you get into this top 4. To me, the Rangers come down at least 1 here because of those injury issues. Braves, they just added Craig Kimbrell to give them more insurance in that bullpen. They've done a really nice job giving themselves layers to that minor league system now. I think the Braves have kind of stepped up here a little bit. Have they stepped up enough to go above the Phillies? I was surprised when we did the first power rankings that they were so high, the Phillies, that is. I still am pretty surprised that I have them this high. But they are a pretty competitive team. I think I'm going to stick with my first rankings here, with the Phillies being a step above. For no other reason than I just think the Phillies have the talent to be better. I think the Braves, if Acuna was starting the season, they certainly would be above the Phillies right now. But the Phillies, if they get Trey Turner to be what Trey Turner is supposed to be, even with Acuna back, I think they'd be neck and neck for that spot. So I think this still keeps the same top 2. Phillies at the top, along with the Dodgers, of course, as the number 1. I think the Dodgers are unquestionably the number 1 until proven otherwise. All the depth in the world that you want in the lineup, in the rotation, and in the bullpen. Of course, they could use some more lineup depth as the year goes along. I think we'll revisit some of the Nolan Arenado talks that we had earlier this offseason. Maybe, just maybe, The Dodgers will be open to it if Kim cannot get that bat going, which seems to be the issue for him. But there's your power rankings updated with all the different injury news we've seen. So Yankees fall a little bit here. Mets stay pretty much in the same spot, but the biggest beneficiary of those injuries right now, to me, is the Padres. Red Sox fall a little bit due to their injury issues. Just slight movement up and down here. Again, no games have been played outside of the Cubs and Dodgers, but injuries do play a part here. And again, we will do our updated power rankings every single Wednesday. So be sure to join us on the eve of MLB opening day next week. And we'll see if there's any other significant injuries that kind of rock the boat here for the power rankings entering the 2025 season. We will have two videos coming out, big videos coming out next week. One will be the power rankings entering the season, and another will be our 2025 season predictions. We'll go through all the awards, all the divisions, wildcard races, tell you who ultimately has the worst record, and those will be the ones we kind of hold ourselves to throughout the year. Now that as we get closer to the start of opening day, start of the season, we'll have a better idea where these teams stand entering the year with their injury situations, and I think we'll be a lot more accurate if we do it as close to the start of the season as possible. Same kind of strategy if you're doing a fantasy draft. You want to do as close to the start of the season as possible so you have the most up-to-date information you could possibly have entering the season. Also, we'll have our Sports Talk show coming again on Sunday. We'll be discussing a few different topics around the NFL, chiefly the Cincinnati Bengals and their ability to retain Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and what that means for other franchises going forward and their ability to retain their wide receivers. We'll look into the Dallas Cowboys and Micah Parsons' contract situation. We'll talk a little bit about Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons. Hopefully we'll have some Aaron Rodgers news. And on the NBA front, we'll be very close to the NBA playoffs, and we'll talk a little NHL Stanley Cup as well. Sub-Zero, welcome back. With all the injuries with the Yankees, are they still a top 10 MLB team? Right now I have them a borderline 10. This is a team that if they have another injury, I think they could plummet here quite significantly. They're propped up on a very thin depth right now in starting rotation, but I do think they'll address that at some point, and then they'll be back up above the Padres in my estimation. That Yu Darvish injury for me, let me just pull it up for you guys. I can't remember how long he's going to be out off the top of my head. Projected for the injured list, questionable for opening day, but again, Musgrove and Darvish and Waldron all expected to be on the injured list to start. They're kind of thin on the starting staff already, but because they haven't traded away King or Cease, I think they still have enough pitching to really overcome it. Meanwhile, a team like the Yankees, they lose their top starter, and while they did bring in Fried, they still are very limited with what other options that they have. And Giancarlo Stanton going down, no Juan Soto. The offense, to me, is a little bit worse. I thought they should have added another minor league player, or another eighth-inning setup guy. They chose not to do that yet. But again, this is a team that I think will make some additions somewhere to address their needs, long before it becomes a significant issue. Now, do I think they're the same team that could have been an ALCS favorite, if not a World Series contender? No, I think that ship has sailed. I think even if they bring in Dylan Cease, I don't think I'd put them as a favorite on the American League side to at least get to the ALCS either. I think it would certainly help out, but he's no Garrett Cole, and I think that really is going to throw a lot of wrenches into the operations there for the Yankees. This could be the year the Yankees decide to sell at the deadline. Remember, the last time they did it, they really set themselves up for 10 years of success. Ultimately, they didn't get their to hang another banner, but we'll have to see if they can get another World Series trophy here if they decide to sell in the next 10 years. So, Yankees measure their success by championships, not by postseason appearances. That's why I wonder if they're a team that's on the outside looking in at the wild card spot by the All-Star break, if they're a team that decides to sell at the deadline. All right, appreciate you guys joining us. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe, that thumbs up on the bottom of the video. Hit that button along with the subscribe button. It really does help us out a lot. I want to thank you all for liking the video, joining us here at the Upside. Follow us on X at UpsideSN and on Facebook, Upside Sports Network. We'll see you guys tomorrow night. Stay safe out there, everybody.